Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
In this week's episode of the Kindness Project, we talk about bad weather, Amazon Prime, and we have part 3 of our interview with Emma McNally from Archive Your Greatness.
Welcome one and all to another episode of The Kindness Project. I'm joined today by a man who is not alone, though he may appear to be on my screen. It's Chris Dames.
Producer Russ is sitting behind me, but even though he normally gets involved in the podcast recordings, he's got another job today, Charlotte, because we're doing all of our business content for the first 3 months of 2023. So right. I've got a Russ is setting all that up while we record a quick podcast.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I know it used to be just me and you, but like
it was me and you for years, wasn't it? Until producer Russ got involved. But yeah, it's weird going back to just me and you again, right?
Yeah, and it's weird going back to me and you, and it's not. My chin is shaking. It's cold.
It's so cold. Your chin is shaking. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. But yeah, it's weird to going back to me and you. We're not even in the same room.
I know. It's really strange. And as you say, it's very cold. Now, just on the London Essex borders today, it's -2, and I thought that was pretty cold. But you said that it's a little bit colder where you are in Glasgow at the minute.
-7, and we haven't had higher than -4 in several days.
Have you had snow?
We had snow and then it just melted.
All right, okay.
But it's frosty. I'm trying not to open my curtains because it gets colder when the curtains are open.
So, unofficial question to podcast listeners, what's the weather like where you are? I mean, we'd love to hear from you about how freezing or tropical it is. Clearly, we're not going to read out tropical ones because that would just make us feel bad. So you feel free to send them in. We just won't read them out. In other news, I think I might change my mind. I watched a movie last night with Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage. And despite it being absolute nonsense, it was quite good.
Is this another picture I sent you?
Well, I mean, the fact that you sent me a picture of topless Nicolas Cage.
No, did you even read the caption?
Well, what you'd put is Nippleless Cage. So I did read the caption, but it wasn't about that. It was about this movie. It's called, I can't even remember the name of it now. It's called The Existential Greatness of some other. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Talent or something along those lines?
Yeah, exactly. The unbearable weight of amazing talent or something like that. But
just search Nicolas Cage movie where Nicolas Cage plays himself. It'll probably come up.
Yeah, exactly. Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage. It will come up. It's on Amazon Prime at the minute if you're in the UK, so you can watch it for free because I wouldn't have paid for it, but it was pretty good, right? So Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage, and he effectively plays him as this guy who does too many movies and makes poor artistic choices and just carries on working but likes to work because like he just takes job after job after job, but is also like in debt and stuff like that, and has quite an extravagant lifestyle and all that stuff. So I've got a feeling there are elements of the character Nick Cage in the film that are based on the real life Nick Cage. So,
do you reckon they had to consider who they would cast as Nicolas Cage in the film?
There's only one man who can play Nick Cage as badly as it needs to be played, and that's Nick Cage, isn't it? Clearly. So, Nick Cage gets offered a job, and he needs the money, okay? And the job is to go to the birthday party for $1 million to go for the birthday party, and he owes 600 grand to this hotel that he's been staying in. $1 million to go to this birthday party, and this turns out, I'm not giving anything away, Charlotte, because this is all in the trailer. It turns out it's somebody who they think is a bit of a dodgy character. Nick Cage becomes friends with this particularly dodgy character, or what they think is a dodgy character, and that's the plot of it. It's the adventures of Nick Cage and this mafia kingpin. And then it has a few twists and turns, and turned from a buddy movie to an action movie, and is all very meta.
I've only seen one clip of it, and it's the clip where they watch Paddington 2 together.
Oh yes. And this is why it's quite sweet, right? So there's bits of it where you go, this is absolute madness. But there's also bits that are quite good fun. But yeah, it's I'd give it a 6 to 7 out of 10. Definitely worth a watch, and particularly on a sort of Monday night when you've got nothing better to do, definitely worth watching. The good news is, you know that cushion you were going to buy me with Nick Cage's face on, covered in sequins?
Yeah.
It's got that in.
What, the one where he's like his top half naked is coming out of a banana?
What?
That's the one I was going to get you.
No, not that one. It's just his face on a cushion. But then the other side of the cushion, it's one of those cushions that
Magic
has
sequins.
2 images on. Yeah, it's covered in sequins. So it's one of them. Because the guy who plays the crime lord is the biggest Nick Cage fan in the world, and he's got loads of Nick Cage memorabilia, including one of those cushions.
There's loads of those kicking about.
Yeah, but what he has got is a little den full of Nick Cage stuff. I'm definitely not going that far. All right. If you had, and again, unofficial question of the podcast for the listeners, if you had a den that contained the stuff from a particular show, but was bordering on the obsessive because you had too much of their stuff, who would that be for you?
Oh, I don't know. You mentioned he's got a room full of Nick Cage stuff, and I'm just thinking about the second Nativity movie where Mr. Poppy opens his cupboard and it's just my room.
It's just who? A David Tennant.
No.
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, it's just his face.
Yeah.
All over, like fairy lights and.
Well, so who would yours be if you had to pick one? If you had to have a room in your house dedicated to one other person, who would it be?
I don't know.
Have a guess.
Have a guess. Okay. What am I guessing? Who yours would be?
I haven't decided who mine's going to be.
Yeah,
yet.
well, exactly. It's difficult to be like.
I reckon it's going to be Brendan Lee Mulligan. Your one.
Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan. You'd have a room dedicated to your favourite D&D dungeon master. I reckon that would happen. How about mine?
I don't know. I reckon Mum's would be Idris Elba.
That would be weird, wouldn't it? If I had to walk into the spare bedroom and suddenly it's a shrine dedicated to Idris Elba. You know what? Right? You know, Raz isn't involved in the podcast today because he's waiting to get the film and stuff done.
To be fair, Raz's would just be a room full of ninja products.
Yes. It just have a second kitchen in his spare bedroom, full of air fryers and food blenders and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. That's not a person, a brand of food stuff. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So I might be warming up to Nick Cage, and what we need, Charlotte, is a Nick Cage mug, don't we? So you can do mug of the week. Is there a Nick Cage mug available?
Let me have a look.
Because that might be your Christmas present. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, Etsy and Redbubble are wonderful places, although I'll never buy anything off Redbubble because it's egregiously expensive. But it's like, you know.
How are we defining egregiously?
It just. I need to get one of these. Have you seen the pillow I sent you? I just found one and it's a picture of Nicolas Cage on a mug. And he's wearing a little flower crown and he's got some flowers around him.
Perfect. That's your Christmas sorted.
And it just says, "You're my national treasure."
Perfect. That is what you're getting for Christmas from me. You're a Nick Cage mug saying you're my national treasure. The other thing, so mug of the week, we're waiting for more mugs to come in. So please, if you've got a mug of a particular brand or business that you'd like us to promote on the podcast and on Charlotte's new Instagram account, mugoftheweek.com, not .com, just Charlotte's Mug of the Week, please do let us know. We're able to promote it. What articles have we got coming up on charlottedames.com? What are you going to be writing about next?
I haven't decided. I usually do this thing where I just I'll take a wander and whatever strikes me inspires me.
And you haven't decided what this week's one's going to be yet?
No.
I reckon it should be about the cold temperatures and how people survive in them.
Well, some people don't. Here's the problem.
I'm glad you're taking that optimistic bent. Right. Okay.
Optimism,
right.
more like realism.
Oh yeah, got it. Right. So let's move on to the next part of the show, which is
kindness news.
And we've got two people that we want to showcase from the happy list. One of them is Lola Idris DeBao. Idris might be a recurring theme in this particular episode of the podcast. This isn't Idris Elba. This is Lola Idris DeBao. Londoner Lola founded the Lola Foundation 15 years ago to provide frontline support to vulnerable people across the city. Lola, originally from Nigeria, experienced homelessness when first moved to the UK 30 years ago and decided to support others in a similar position. Twice a month, the foundation hosts food donation points, providing London for hundreds of people, including providing food for hundreds of people, including Lola's home-cooked Nigerian meals. Lola has also expanded the foundation to Nigeria, where 4 times a year it provides humanitarian assistance for some of the most vulnerable people in Lagos. I'm passionate about taking care of people, she says. I know what it is to be vulnerable. I want to use this platform to call on everybody that cares about humanity to support us so we can continue to feed and support these people. We are the change that is needed. And I think the interesting thing about that is, for me, is going through that experience and that period of adversity, I think informs your perspective on life, doesn't it? Because if you've gone through tough times but come out the other end, you probably want to do a bit of good in the world. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think our previous experiences can have an effect on sort of the way we think and the way we want to affect the world around us as well.
In what way?
I mean, because if you've been through something, it can sort of be sort of hard when you see others going through it, because you know how difficult that is and you just want to help them because,
And it sounds like Lola's doing amazing work to help and support people. The other person I want to showcase today is a gentleman called Geraint John. I've probably butchered his name. Sorry, Geraint. It might be Geraint. After a 5-month charity cycle ride around the UK last year, Geraint was horrified by the amount of beach litter he saw. The 51-year-old from Massteg in Bridgend has since embarked on a 700-mile cleanup of Wales. I tell you what, this Gerard doesn't do things by half, does he? He's doing a bike ride by around the UK, and then he thought, right, that's not enough. I'm going to do more. The 51-year-old from Masteg in Bridgend has since embarked on a 700-mile clean-up of Wales's coastline, single-handedly clearing tons of litter from beaches and inspiring others to join him in tackling plastic pollution. Gerard, who started his mammoth journey in the Mumbles, Swansea on the 13th of May, is also fundraising through this challenge by a boat that will enable him to visit more inaccessible coastal areas, collect litter. So great work from Lola and Gerard there. Well done on that amazing stuff. We've got part 3 of the episode with Emma McNally coming up. Emma is from an organisation called Achieve Your Greatness, and what she's going to be talking about is using NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, to think differently about the world and achieve what you want in life. And if you can do that, you can be a little bit kinder to yourself. Let's listen to the interview. This is my story. So every year, my dad now is 73. And every year for the past probably about 10, 15 years, I have a weekend or a long weekend away with my dad, like just to create memories and just spend time with my dad. And we've just been more conscious, as he's got older and, we've got older. We did that, and the last holiday we had was pre-pandemic. We went away this year, but it was in the UK. But pre-pandemic, we went to Gibraltar. So I'm responsible for booking all of the sort of travel and stuff like that. I booked this hotel, Emma, Gibraltar.
Very nice.
Flew into Gibraltar Airport. Yep. Got in a taxi outside Gibraltar Airport. Said, "Look, this is the address," and the guy said, "I can't take there." I thought, that's strange. Okay, why can't you take there? He went. The Hotel Gibraltar isn't in Gibraltar.
No,
it's in Spain. Literally, it's like. Have you been to Gibraltar? Have you been to Gibraltar?
I have.
Right, so the border is literally just by the airport, isn't it?
It is.
So I've said to my dad, like, I'm really sorry. I should have checked whether it was in a different country or not. I had to drag him over the border. And it was about literally 10 minutes walk into Spain. I thought, right, my dad's in his 70s. We'll get a taxi.
Yep.
And we realised that we didn't have any euros because clearly we thought we were going to stay Gibraltar and therefore we'd have pounds, right? So I had to drag my 73-year-old dad down the road to this hotel. He wasn't happy, clearly,
no.
but thankfully in the morning it was a bit better. And I did say, well, look, if we're going into Gibraltar, at least we're getting international travel every single day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just one of those experiences where you go, at the time it feels like the worst mistake in the world. I mean, there's not much bigger than booking a hotel in the wrong country, is there? But just admitting that you got it wrong, going, actually, it's not the end of the world. We'll still cope with it.
What can we do about it?
Fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and my experience professionally is, and again, I've had an experience quite recently where being proactive about things that go wrong and then just taking action to fix it is always better, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. And
so as we're in a sharing mood, talk to me about the mistake that you've made, that you've rectified.
So many. So many mistakes. Oh, okay. So I've made quite a few mistakes in my life, I have to say. An interesting one rather than a boring one. I'm going to nick one first of all from somebody else that you can see how actually mistakes can be really useful. Have you ever heard the story about the Post-it note company? The company that set up Post-it notes. So they were wanting to invent or make glue. Okay. So the whole
Right.
idea of what they were trying to do was to make glue. Now, if you've ever used a post-it note, one of the things that it's not great at is sticking.
Yeah.
And I loved how rather than going, well, that's a massive failure, yeah, what they did instead was go, well, that's interesting. What could we use it for? And that's when they created post-it
Yeah.
notes.
So they innovate the idea with just looking
Exactly.
at something else.
So just being looking at it as a failure rather than it being a failure, it's actually maybe it's an opportunity for doing something in a different way.
Interesting.
So yeah, I really like that concept. So I haven't got an exciting story as you, I'm afraid, but many failures, such as being able to ride a bike, all sorts of things that technology just the weekend was an interesting one. It was like we had speakers and microphones and that didn't quite go to plan, but being be creative. One of the biggest failures, probably lack of prep. It was a big car manufacturing company locally, and I was there doing a lunch and learn. And I turned up and I hadn't realized that they wanted to have a lapel mic with a battery pack. And I was wearing a dress.
Right.
Say no more.
That doesn't work particularly well. Does it? Where do you put the battery back? It's just, it just doesn't work.
So many little ones, big ones, all sorts of things. But I think, to be honest, to be able to learn from it, to be able to laugh from it, to be able to go, actually, it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things.
Zoom out, right? Zoom out.
This astronaut view. I went to see the Gaia at the cathedral, the Gaia that's traveling around. And that's all about taking the astronaut's view of the world and seeing the world from a different perspective. Actually, all these things sort of shrink into insignificance. So what that I, made lemon chicken that was so disgusting that my husband wouldn't eat it and we had to make it into a tandoori. So what? So what that it doesn't really matter.
It's funny. Like that question, are we gonna worry about this in 30 years' time? Is just a great one, isn't it?
Yeah,
so one of the things, Emma, that one of the things that you mentioned on your website when I was doing the research for this interview is anxiety. And using NLP tools to tackle issues of worry and anxiety. Can you just share one of those tools that is useful for dealing with that?
Yeah. So one of the things that you do with anxiety, there'll be a belief system that sits behind it. So one of the things as well is whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, that can link into it as well. So whether you're a glass half full or half empty, that can have an impact. And anxiety is it's about thinking about the future and projecting something less than helpful. Yeah. So one of the things you could do is reframe. So look at it in a different way. And rather than, maybe it's going to be awful, or maybe it's going to be good. And looking at a more positive view. If I just share briefly what happens if you're an optimist or a pessimist going through life, which will give you a bit of what I'm talking about. So imagine that two people had exactly the same life events happen. One was optimistic. So when they were having a high, an amazing time, they thoroughly enjoyed it, stayed there longer. When life's like less than easy things happen, they're in the troughs of life, they're less time because they go, it won't last, it's okay, we'll get through this. And then they're up high and they're higher for longer. So this is the pattern they have. If you're a pessimist, what happens is when they're at the peak and having a great time,
they're worried about what's next.
It's not going to last. And then they spend less time at the peaks and more times in the troughs. So being able to shift our thinking and going, okay, let's look at it in a different way. That can be really, really helpful. The other
this is really interesting. So I consider myself a 100% natural optimist, right? And I'm certainly sort of glass half full, life's going to be good, and thankfully it's like sort of all heading in the right direction. But is there an argument for pessimism? Because when I look at my approach to life, business, whatever, I can sometimes be a bit rose tinted, and therefore not, not factoring it in some of the things that go wrong probably as much as I should. So, like, I've had to train myself to be a natural optimist, but a bit more of a professional pessimist, if that makes sense. Make sure we're aware of the risks, but not driven by them. So, how do you make sure that you're being optimistic about the future, but also potentially looking at some of those risks in a sensible way so that you're aware of them?
So we've got a beautiful tool that we use in NLP. It's called the Disney Creativity Strategy. It was modeled from Walt Disney. And basically what that is you step into that optimistic, creative, dreamer state, but then you move into the pragmatist. So what do I need to do?
Yeah.
What plans do I need? How do I need to work this through? So rather than going, oh, yeah, like going on holiday, it'll be fine. We'll find something when we're there and it'll be great. It'll be amazing. Yeah, having the plan in place to make sure it happens. And then you go to the critic space. So I guess it's the challenge, the critical friend.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? What are the risks? How do we mitigate it? And you know what? If you find that any of those are less than easy, work with other people. You can obviously learn how to do it yourself, but actually, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about our strengths? If you're the ideas person, then great, have somebody who's going to put the plans in place and then come back to you and say, okay, so how do we work around this? How do we manage that? So I think there is a balance. In general, to have an optimistic view can, from a mind point of view, from a mental health point of view, is really helpful. And to be able to plan for those things so that you've got those plans in place. So sometimes anxiety happens because we feel out of control. So it's that control thing again. By being able to have plans in place, that can help you feel more in control. And what you can also do is create something called a resource anchor so that you can feel grounded, feel safe. We talked about the positive intentions. So being able to choose our response rather than being triggered by events. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Completely get that. And I know one of the things you mentioned earlier was imposter syndrome and the prevalence of imposter syndrome regardless of what you do. Just for our listeners, share a tool that might help somebody sort of manage that.
Yeah, again, I mean, imposter syndrome is based on beliefs. So a lot of this stuff comes back to beliefs and what we believe about ourselves. And to be able to learn what we do in NLP is we go back, we do some stuff on terms of timeline, go back to the very first time that we decided what that belief was, and then learn from it. Because we've got conscious mind, which is our thinking. We think that our brain is the bit that's in control. However, that's only a small part. Okay, so you've got the thinking brain, but then you've got your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind runs the blueprint of your health. It has a storehouse of your wisdom, your memories, and the resources sit within that. And what happens is your unconscious mind, if there's a limiting belief, will carry on running that pattern because we haven't learned what we need to learn for it to feel safe to let it go. So what we do in NLP is go back to the very first time, learn what we need to learn, because some of these beliefs we've downloaded from when we were kids. Worked with somebody recently. She was really, really nervous in terms of public speaking. Turned out that when she was in assembly, when she was about 8, she forgot her lines. And from that moment, she believed that she was awful at public speaking. Well, actually, she was a kid, right? So going back and being able to learn what she needed to learn, to let that go.
But one event doesn't define it, does it? That's the thing, but it can do for a lot of people.
Beliefs can be created through either repetition. So, we talked about, the neuroplasticity. Well, that's over time. It's called classic conditioning. Over time, we create that path, but also a significant emotional event. So one event could create it. But it doesn't have to mean that that's your future, because using neuroplasticity and neuroscience, we can go back, we can change that belief, we can learn what we need to learn so that our unconscious mind can let it go and move forward with a new belief. Does that make sense? So that you can then have that
perfect
resource. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So So we've come to the end of the interview, but I'm really keen on making sure that we talk about a bit about your book and a bit about where people can find you. So tell me about where people can get access to the book, but also where people can find out about Achieve Your Greatness.
Achieve Your Greatness. Yep. So website, it's Achieve Your Greatness, all one word, .co.uk. So on there, we've got information about tasters. So you can come on a 2-hour taster on Zoom so that you can learn a little bit more. I teach you a couple of great tools that you can go away with immediately to use to help to change how you're feeling about things, and one around communication. So how to have better relationships. So the book is called Who's Flying Your Plane? How to Master the Controls of Your Life. You can get that via Amazon and your normal bookstores. So yeah, but there'll be a link on the website to that as well, so that you can.
And we'll make sure that when this goes out on the Kindness Project's website, that's on the show notes, so you'll be able to find that link as well.
Yes, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Kindness Project today. Have a lovely day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.
So that's part 3 of Emma. That was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do to end the show, I mean, do you want to do? You don't want to do a joke this week, do you? What was that random noise that sounds like it came out of Stranger Things?
I do want to do a joke. I do want to do a joke. You talk about your book first, and then
I will. So the Kindness Project book is out now. We've got a book launch coming up that's going to be in Deepest Darkest Essex. If you're around the area, we'd love for you to come. Look out on all of the socials all of the time for details of that when it comes out. But you can get it on Amazon and on the publisher's website now. So we'll put the links in the show notes. But check out Chris Dames on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and you'll be able to get all of the information there. Are you ready for the joke of the week? Go on.
what happened when 2 guys stole a calendar?
What happened when 2 guys stole a calendar?
They each got 6 months.
And on that note, that is thankfully the end of another podcast. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the Kindness Project soon. Bye.
Bye.